Good evening and welcome to Nurturing Our Roots. I'm so excited tonight for this very special segment. And I'm very happy to have my friend, my colleague, Bernice Alexander Bennett, the award winning author, genealogist, historian, speaker, interview, and talk to me tonight about something she know all too well about. So let me just welcome her tonight. Hi, Bernice. How are you?
Hello, Antoinette, and thank you so much for inviting me because we do have something really special to talk about tonight.
And Bernice, that is what are we doing with our family papers? Donating our family papers to repositories, and why is that important? And Bernice, you know for yourself because you have a collection yourself, you
Yes,
know how important it is to preserve those papers.
I certainly do. So let's, talk about, why is it important to preserve your family papers?
Well, Bernice, it was important for me because I had maybe 30 years of photographs, documents, and things that I knew that would be a great help to anyone researching family history, not just family history, but history period in the areas where my ancestors live.
Mhm.
And so I had to make a very important decision because I had original pictures, some original documents, but I just had a lot of information, oral history, transcripts, all types of information that could be vital to bringing that puzzle together, putting that puzzle together of local history.
Right. And, you're talking about you had all of this information, but tell us the types of papers you have been collecting and preserving.
Bernice, I all my family papers, and I wanted, I would like to get into a brief PowerPoint because it would really explain the different categories in which I had to make those choices. Let me just go ahead and pull that up, and we can get into that.
Sure.
Uh, and that will really give everybody an overview of how important it is. Why did I preserve my family papers? The very question that you just asked. One of the things I want to make sure that my family papers were secured and stored in the right, content in which you could. Because sometimes we know we can store things in a box, in a dark closet, or somewhere where it may be dark, damp, and the papers over a time and period can be ruined, especially photographs. If you don't preserve those photographs and you put them somewhere they can stick together, depending on and you losing that little bitty piece of history. And like we think about records that's crumbling inside of the vaults of family history, well, that's the same thing we think about, our own family history. So that was important for me to make that decision. And I knew that it would be secured. That was the most important thing. And secured, Bernice, in the fact that I myself had to sign in to look at my own collection. Okay, I had to produce a driver's license or some type of ID to look inside of my own collection. And I felt comfortable with that because I wanted to know that what I put in here would not walk off. Okay. Now I am at the special collections at LSU. Now this is not my collection, but this is someone else's collection. Now just think if that person would not have donated their family papers, it would make it very hard for me to research my family history. So that I thought about that too. What did I want someone to find in my collections? What did I want to leave behind? That was a very important factor. And I want to be like the other donors that have donated their papers. I want to make sure that I write, not rewrite, but write my family, my community into the history, whether that be history books, films, thesis, papers, journals. I want to make sure that I provided information for that to take place. What you're looking at here, this is the donating your family papers can help to write history, like we were just talking about. And I was mentioning to you about those boxes. Now, all the material that you see on this card, that is my material. That's just one card. And when I tell you, when I go to look in my collections from time to time, I'm very surprised at a lot of things that I have in there because I'm like, okay, this is really my items. I'm sorry, I have Family Search Center in Utah, but that's not. That is at the Amistad Research Center. So you have seen those boxes at the National Archives, so you know what I'm talking about. So
Yes.
that
Mhm.
was very important for me to make that decision. Where's my family papers housed? And I'll tell you why. The Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies, because all of my information that I have collected for the Florida parishes, it was very easy for people who live in the rural communities to access that collection at the Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies. So I gave some thought into that, you know, because first of all, you may see, and you know this from being a genealogist, you may see an index online, but you physically have to go there and see the record.
Mhm.
So I wanted to make it as easy as I possibly can. Now, the AMET Genealogy Library, there's copies. They'll take copies. It didn't have to be the original. But the Amistad, most of my documents and papers as it relates to New Orleans, my 30 years living there, family histories, some of the activist work that I was involved with the community. I thought to myself, this belongs in New Orleans. Then, fourth, but last, but very important, when I blog about those records and I post a picture or whatever in my blogs, that means electronically I am preserving that photograph because you do know we live in a time now we're seeing climate change. There's tornadoes and hurricanes, and any institution for that matter can be affected, by it. But so that's why I thought that if I blog and post some of those photographs, if something should happen, all is not lost.
Mhm.
And that was something very important for me to think about. This is a collection of the funeral programs. And with this collection, now I can actually say that there's four African American collections at the Center for Southeast Studies, Bernice Alexandra Bennett collection being one of them, Richardson's Funeral Home, the second one, which is it consists of over 1,200 funeral programs. That's a lot of
Mhm.
programs and a lot of work that goes with it. Third, the third collection would be Dr. Kinsley Garrison, and the fourth one that we're working on, and we should uh, have that collection established next month. That is the Drum newspapers, the oldest Black newspaper, and that covered a lot of the histories in these areas. And once again, you can see there's a lot of the funeral programs. There's a box of documents. Now, just imagine with all of everything I showed you in the first box, that's the first. That was a collection that took place years ago. Now, this is a new collection. There's no way. Before I know it, my whole house would be boxes and papers. A different type of hoarder. And once again, I was called out to look at records that was discarded, thrown away. And Bernice, I don't know. I didn't think about spiders, black widows, snakes. I don't know what I was thinking, but I tell you what, I won't do it again. You know, I will not do that again. Matter of fact, I didn't even think about the building falling down. I mean, really,
You
something.
were on a mission.
Look,
You
look,
were on a
something
mission.
takes over you and you don't know what it is, but whatever it is, snakes get out the way. I have to get these records. And believe me, it was some very important records in these files that was thrown away.
Mhm.
And once again, when you came to Southeastern to consider donating your papers to the Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies, you know, um, Dr. Kinsley Garrison. Oh my God, the photographs that Dr. Garrison had, Bernice, is just photographs of some of the earlier baptisms in the river, you know, school photographs of the color schools. And I'm talking about some of the schools was schools that was held in a church.
Mhm.
He had photographs. I mean, looked like every time he would get up and he would walk to the back, he'd come back with something. And I'm like, I don't believe I'm looking at this. I don't believe it. You know, and he passed away, but we did establish some things, and I was able to preserve some of his photographs, not the originals at the Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies, but we made copies. So that
Mhm.
Dr. Samuel Hyde did take the copies because it was like we'd rather have something than nothing. And the lady that you're looking at, this is mother and daughter. They came over to my home, and as you can see, Bernice, all of those documents are originals.
Yes.
Those are original photographs. Um, some of those photographs dates back to like the 30s, 20s. Uh, the woman with the we'll both have glasses, but the one without the hat, she passed away about 4 months ago.
Mhm.
And that's mother and daughter. The mother has two children, and her daughter was the one that was really the one with thinking about how to preserve the family records, the family collection. And her mom was just, banking on the fact that her daughter would do it. And now her daughter has passed away.
Oh, mhm.
Uh-huh. But one thing I can assure everyone, they did allow me to take photographs of the collection. So I do have some scanned documents and originals. And some of those are from the O.W. Dillon Color School, Tuskegee University, some things that took place in the community. Once again, this is Kathy Hambrick and Leonard Smith. And as you can looking around, look at all the photographs on the
Mhm.
wall. Now,
Mhm.
just think if someone would not have, whether you know that person or whether you do not know that person, it's just difficult for me to throw a picture away. I don't care if I have to take a photograph of it and put it online. I
Mhm.
do not, because somebody may recognize the people in those photographs. This is the library. Um, this is the African American album that I donated to the library. I had photographs left over from my book, The Saint Preserving African American History in St. Helena and Tangipahoa Whole Parish. So once I finished with the stills, I donated them to the library in the album with an index, and I numbered each photograph, and I typed the name of each individual that I knew of. It was very few unknown in there. So that was really good. 90% of the people could be identified. That was really good because as we move on and progress, sometimes you can't identify the people. No one is living that can identify. And this is what that album looked like.
Oh, wow.
So as you see the numbers, 31, whatever it may be, well, there's an index in front of the book that will say, this is that person,
Mhm.
and look how beautiful those photographs is. Just, to me, they tells a story.
Yes. Mhm.
And this is my collection at the Amistad. Now, remember, now we're talking about all these boxes. Um, and I must say, when I look at the collection, I am always surprised of. It's like, Antoinette, when did you have this? Wow, and that sense of knowing that you're called to do something. You was called to do something. I was reading something that someone quoted the other day, and it said, "We're that generation that is documenting now. We're that generation that's telling it through books, and we're researching, documenting, and telling our family stories. So we're that generation." Karen was also consulting with Samuel Hyde to see if where would be the best repository for her collection. I don't think they have made any decisions on it yet, but I'm more than sure it's in the makings. And we, let me go back. Let me see if I can pull this. No, I can't. This is PDF. Um, Another way of preserving a family history is photographs. Family photographs can be shared through family times spent together. So it's my niece, my great niece, and my nephew looking at photographs that a book that I give. I make books for my family. I don't give buy presents. I like making presents. And these little family books that you can basically make on Shutterfly anyway. And I always like to give that to them because it has a meaning somewhere down the line. Preserving family history. Now write, preserving your family history once again can write a book. There's a small amount of African American family books on most shelves in any repository. Let me just let you know, how can that narrative be changed? I want to be part of the changing that narrative. What can I do? I want to make a difference from what I found in 1994 when I started. And the fact that less, are you willing to donate your family papers? That's the hardest question. And I know a lot of times people think about, oh, we won't. No, you can make provisions in the contract, you know please consider that. If you want to get that contract and you want an attorney to look over that contract, because you're donating, but there is a clause for provisions, and that provision can be, I want to access my collection without paying the fees or whatever it may be. Whatever your provisions is, talk to the person that you are speaking with, consulting with, concerning your collection. As you know, a lot of documents and family documents you collected throughout your years to write your book, but not only that, to help other people tell their story in the Black homesteaders of the South. That was documentations that you pulled from the National Archives that help us tell the story. Another person, genealogy storytelling blueprint. It's a blueprint. And so if we want to leave a blueprint for the next generation, not just the next generation, but for scholars right now, I often hear people say, no, there's nothing on our history.
Mhm.
Well, who can tell your story like you can tell it? Whose
Right.
responsibility is it to tell it?
Mhm.
And we must keep that in mind. And because Leonard did his research, he's an award-winning filmmaker. Documentary, he collect documentaries, documents, photographs, oral history, and turned it into an award-winning film. Preserving your family history is your gift. It's a gift, you, your family, into the community. So we all who have done any type of genealogy research, we're very familiar with files that look like this. you know High eights. We watch technology evolve, and each time we watch technology evolve, that means things become outdated, it ages, and it becomes very, very important, because oral histories that I collect 20 years ago, most of the people are gone now.
Mhm.
They're not here. And the end result of sharing my findings in photographs helped me, along with all the many contributors to this book, Images of America, African Americans, and Tangible Hope, and St. Helena Parish. Now, Bernice, I have enough to do another book. And I'm considering doing that because there's just so many documents that I collected afterwards that can be a part of that book. And
Mhm.
there's other photographs that I have collected since that time.
Yes. Well, it is just a wonderful feeling to see that you have preserved your family stories and documents, and that you have now have them in repositories in different places. But the question I really want to know, what were some of your challenges?
Very good question. Some of the challenges that I'm having is I spend years and years maybe consulting with individuals who I know have a rich collection.
Mhm.
Once I analyze it, assess that collection, I know what I'm looking at.
Mhm.
especially as it relates to some of the schools, the color schools,
Mhm.
the schools that was in the church house, um, collective community events, getting the people to realize that it's time to make a decision.
Mhm.
I don't know if they're fearing talking about that day, but that day is just not passing away. That day is becoming ill where you just can't do it.
Mhm.
You have it sitting there. You want to do it. Your children can't do it because either they're working, they have their own families, they can't do it. I can assure you it took me 1 year,
Mhm.
1 year. And I had to work on that weekly. It wasn't like I decided to work on it today, I put it down for a month. No, it was day in. It started in the morning and it ended up in the evening time.
Mhm.
But it was
Mhm.
a mission accomplished.
Right. Right. But when you think about it, you have people, they have all of this information, but why do you think people hold on to their collection and not put it somewhere so that it could be preserved for the
I
future?
I think I have heard a lot of people say, I want to pass it to my children
Hmm.
and my grandchildren.
Hmm.
And I think what I had to do, I had to listen to my children. I had to pay attention to the one that would want to spend that time with me,
Hmm.
going through photographs, going through the boxes. And that person never came. So I knew then that I had to make a decision because if something should have happened to me, that would have been it was overwhelming for me, Bernice, as the person who collected. So
Hmm.
I can only imagine, what someone who have no interest in these things at all will look at these boxes and say, there's no way
Hmm.
I am going through all of this.
Hmm.
And so the challenge is getting people to understand I much rather have it in a repository where books can be written about the subject matters,
Hmm.
uh, you know, films, documentaries, people can learn about the area where my ancestors once lived, than to say selfishly, I want to give it to my children who really do not want it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it wasn't fair to them. It wasn't fair to the community. It wasn't fair to my ancestors to say, because this is my children, they ought to be the ones with it. But
Hmm.
they will always have access to it.
Right, right.
Always.
Actually, you're lifting a burden
Hmm.
by putting your information or developing a collection and putting it somewhere so that they can access it whenever they want.
That is a burden. That is a burden that you lift off the family because first of all, you're asking young people or somebody in their family to go through boxes of information that they know nothing about.
Hmm.
They may not even know why did she have this? I don't know these people. And
Hmm.
we know this is what happens with photographs all the time. If
Yes.
a person don't know them, that picture means absolutely nothing.
Also, Antoinette, sometimes they may look at some of your information and say, this isn't important. You knew it was important. That's why you held on to it.
Hmm.
But they'll look at it. I have an original receipt from my great great grandfather in 1908 where he borrowed money. It's important
Hmm.
because I could see on the back of that receipt where he wrote every time he paid off
Oh, really? In his own
in his own
handwriting.
handwriting.
Hmm.
And that's important. Whereas somebody else may look at it and say, "Oh, that's junk. That's old.
Yeah,
Why do I need to hold on to something
yeah,
like that?"
yeah,
And
yeah.
then you mentioned these pictures. Antoinette, I received a packet of pictures that someone found in one of the antique stores. in the Florida parishes and sent them to me. I think I sent them to you. Could you see if we could find the owners of these
Hmm.
beautiful pictures?
Hmm.
But what about these old pictures? You were really lucky that the mother and daughter sit down with you and share with you all of those pictures and you could make copies. But what about the people who look at the pictures and say, I don't know who that is, and the pictures go in the trash? Or they give them
Exactly.
to an antique. So an antique dealer would be more than happy to come in and get all your pictures.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Mhm,
so we have to, and if we know our parents or family member have a collection, we need to start talking to their children about those collection. What do you think your mom want to do? Is it something you want? There anybody in the family? Do
mhm,
you think that you can get her to start the collection? And one thing about the collection can be put in their name.
mhm,
You
mhm.
see, that's another great way to honor the memory of someone that passed away or your family member that did something that was so outstanding. What a great way to honor the legacy of that person.
Right. So, do you have any other recommendations for others who may or may not be thinking of preserving their family papers?
Well, preserving the family papers is just like preserving the land for me.
Mhm,
You know, we are really losing not just land, but we're losing a piece of history,
mhm,
each time that we do not preserve or have these conversations. I think that if someone live with their parents or they know that their parents have a collection or honor someone, and especially if that aunt does not have any children and she's solely dependent upon her nieces and nephews, sometimes you can just go and make an appointment and take her to the repository center and just let her just show her what it would mean.
mhm,
To what that would be such an honor. We see it all the time. If you go online, Bernice, you can pull up so many collections at LSU,
yes.
the National Archives, so many index to records. But just think if somebody didn't do that.
Mhm,
And I hear people say all the time, well, there was absolutely nothing on in Tangipahoa Parish in St. Helena. I get so tired of hearing that
mhm.
because the thing about it, what are we going to do? It's in our homes. You
Right.
know, it's in our homes, and sometimes if they haven't reached that point, share it through blogs, and it can be through a private family page that you share. The photographs with someone. I've heard people talk about somebody's house burned down.
Mhm,
The tornado took the photographs. That was the last one they had of their grandparents or the great grandparents that was on the wall. And that was the only thing that was destroyed. You hear people say that. And that hurt them more than losing the house.
yes. Yes. And I can relate to what you're saying
Hmm.
because of Hurricane Katrina. And everything was destroyed. Even the beautiful pictures on the wall, they were destroyed because they fell into the water and they were gone.
It was gone.
It was gone. So
Mhm.
we have to plan for natural disasters
Exactly.
and almost and have that plan already set up. And every time I look at your collection, and I went to the Amistad, and I actually went through your collection, and I was so amazed at
Hmm.
the information that you had collected and that you had now made part of history for
Yeah.
people like me to come in town and to go and look at your collection.
You
And
know,
it just I felt that you were honoring me by giving me this privilege,
that's right.
you
That's
know,
right.
and if we could look at that, what a privilege. And Southeast, the same thing, Antoinette.
Hmm. It's a gift to us all, to everyone. And it remind me, Bernice, I haven't started yet I haven't started processing my oral history collection.
Mhm.
Oh, that is in so many different formats that, first of all, I had to buy new equipment just to convert it over.
Mhm.
So, as if we wait too long, time starts to evolve. Now you have to find this particular item on Amazon or somewhere. So, one of the questions you asked before we came on air is, how do you find the time?
Yes. Please share that.
Let me tell you, it I had to make the time.
Mhm.
I had to really sit down and say, this is a priority to me.
Mhm.
This is very important to me. I had to learn to say no. I had to learn that I couldn't be everywhere,
Mhm.
couldn't accept all the invitations. I was there in the spirit, but I had to do this.
Mhm.
And that took 1 year, one solid year. And when I finished and saw the collection, then I knew it was time well spent.
Mhm.
Because one thing I realized, I am not getting any younger.
Mhm.
I have to face this like anybody else. What what how would I feel knowing that I couldn't come in my office and work with my collections?
Mhm.
And now I have to entrust it to somebody else.
Right. Right.
And I do not know one person inside of my family that would take the collection and process it. Not that they wouldn't want to, but their lives are busy too.
Yes. Yes.
Working, kids, grandkids, other issues and other matters in your life. And the last thing you're thinking about is going in that room and looking at a collection. Let me show you something if I can show this. This is a book, a very, very rare book. And it somebody dropped it off at the library for me.
Mhm.
And this is about the educated men during the 1800s that was moving around the South, starting colleges and schools. There are pictures, and something about them is written on in this book.
Oh my
Maybe
goodness.
about 5 women, but it's Mississippi, Louisiana,
Uh-huh.
and it cover a lot of those. Um, um, and it's a very rare book.
Mhm.
And so I made my decision to bring it to the Amistad
Mhm.
because at least they would be able to scan it and
Mhm.
make it available if somebody wanted to learn about those disciples of Booker T. Washington who was moving throughout the South, starting these Negro colleges.
Oh wow. And somebody entrusted you by dropping that book off.
That person knew that I saved things.
Yeah.
Like you, someone dropped a mail to me um, a CD with photographs from a collection called the Fajondi collection.
Mhm.
And she said to me, she said, my health is failing and I wanted you to have this.
Mhm. Mhm.
So now there is somebody that wanted to do something with it and I will pass it on to them.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And that's how I guess this is the way that we tell our own story,
Mhm.
preserve our own story, and tell it.
Yes. And I just admire your commitment, and there's a drive that you have that's so important, and I think it's something that we all probably need to have, that drive and that commitment to preserve and tell
You
those
have it.
stories.
Yeah, you have it. You have it. When you told, first of all, researching your ancestor, Peter Clark, and telling your grandmother's story, not only did you write your personal book, but you also organized other people to tell their stories in your book, The Black Homesteaders of the South. So it's the same drive.
Mhm.
It's the same drive.
And you wonder, where does that come from? And it's something that happens, that say it's not just about me, It's about us.
That's right.
And I certainly have seen that in you, because people have come to you with materials and have left that with you in those funeral programs, because they know, they trust you. And it's gaining that trust in the community, so that people understand that you're going to do the right thing. And families need to understand they have to do the right thing too. Don't put your mother and your father and your grandmother's stuff on the street to let the dumpster, the people come and just
And
take it.
that have happened many a times.
No, I know.
Many a times.
Mhm.
There was one lady, she was in a nursing home, and I went over there to see her. And the first thing that she kept saying, she was the secretary of the church.
Mhm.
And she had all these records and, church programs, funeral programs, photographs. She kept saying they threw my sack away with
Oh,
all of my information.
oh,
And that bothered her because, just holding on to that was her way of holding on to everybody that she knew in her lifetime.
yes,
And
yes.
it was like throwing away everybody that she knew in her lifetime.
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know so I think we have to do more, uh use more platforms like Nurturing Our Roots,
Mhm.
or whatever it is, to educate people on the importance of, one, analyzing the collection, assessing that
Mhm.
collection,
Mhm.
because not everything is preservable for a repository.
Mhm.
It has to be a combination of, you know old documents, old photographs, newspaper clippings I've had, just you name it, it was there, you know. And so that was very important for me. And I feel like today I'm very comfortable with that decision that I made. I feel that if I had to do all over again, I would do it again.
Mhm.
But this time I would start a little bit earlier,
Mhm. Mhm.
because it took me 1 year now with all the videotapes I have. That's a whole nother process.
Right.
Now, what the Amistad said to me, that because they want the originals,
Mhm.
some of those VHS tapes is very important because it was events that took place around New Orleans.
Mhm.
And so what I'm going to do is donate that to them.
Mhm.
Some of the marches that took place, some of the speakers, just a lot of history that belongs to New Orleans prior to Hurricane Katrina. And
Mhm.
that's a very important piece of the history of those communities that is there. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going through all the VHS tapes, and what I'm doing is putting them in the box and bring them the originals.
Right. Now I
I
have
have
a question for you, Antoinette,
Mhm.
because you have identified where you wanted your information to go. Were you given any guidelines from those
Oh
institutions
yes,
before they
yeah,
accepted? Okay,
absolutely.
what did they tell you?
Well, absolutely. The Amistad, it has to be original.
Mhm.
It's a donation. It's not a loan. You
Mhm.
can't loan it to them. It's a donation.
Mhm.
And so those guidelines, they will sit down and go over that with you to
Mhm.
let you know what that means when you're relinquishing the rights to your collection over to them to preserve.
Mhm.
Because it's a lot of work that goes into that. Um, for someone to come and say 4 months from now, I think I changed my mind. I want I want my papers back. No, it doesn't work that way. So when you consider donating,
Mhm.
it's best to get in contact with that facility, that repository,
Mhm.
and just find out from them, is there a guideline on the website?
Mhm.
Can I go to your website? Do you have anything that I can read about what it is that you accept and what you won't accept?
Mhm.
Because that's another thing too. You need to know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
Right. Correct. Mhm. Well, that's really good to know, so that you don't show up with a box and the box is rejected.
Something else we was talking about, and the reason I organize my collections, and most of my collections go up really fast. Now, sometimes it doesn't work like that. It
Mhm.
may take, and especially if the center is understaffed,
Mhm.
it may take, if you, let's say somebody had 3 boxes, they never went through the boxes. That means that person have to sit there and go through every item.
Mhm.
Very time consuming. So if you just drop the boxes off, it may take a year.
Mhm.
It depends on how many other collections they are working on, um, the staff.
Mhm.
Do they have the personnel to do this, to move it quickly? But especially at the Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies, they always tell me, we know when Antoinette is bringing the collection, it's already organized.
Mhm.
And so when I bring the index, the only thing they need to do is copy and paste and put the index, and it's in folders. So every document, every photograph is already in the folder in which it belongs.
Mhm.
So when I bring it to them, there's the index to match folder number 5. I know what's in folder number 5.
Mhm.
And so that makes it very easy for them. So within 60 days, my collection can be up online, the index.
Mhm.
That's really a quick turnaround.
Right, that really is. But you help them a lot by creating that index and putting them in the correct folders.
And the index is something that I keep for myself, because if I ever need to go back to something, at least I can pull my binder and say, okay, this is where this is at. Now, I'm happy to announce that I was part of a grant that the Amistad received. And I was chosen to be a part of that grant where my collection was processed and the index is online.
Mhm.
So in most of my collections, they are online in the index, and
Right.
that's very good.
I think that is absolutely wonderful. And you made a really good point. When you donate, it is no longer something that you could go back and get back. So you are signing, you're releasing this information to them as part of a permanent collection. It's no
Exactly.
longer for you.
That's
It's
right.
no longer for your family members, but they do have access. They can go in but they have to sign in also.
They
You
have to
can't
sign
just
in
walk
also.
in there.
That's right.
Yes. Hmm.
Because now remember, if it's no longer your collection, they're going to operate according to their policies.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
it's not your collection. You have to really know that, yeah, that is my grandfather's picture, but you gave the rights to that. But not to say that if you're writing a book or something, you can always use your material for that.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
If I know that I'm working on something, what I would do is scan it and have a file here at home,
Hmm.
so I wouldn't have to go there and look at it. But a lot of times, maybe once or twice, I mean, once every 2 years, I will go and look at my collections.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I try to take a new family member with me when I go. So at least they
Right.
would know what's there, what's in there,
Right. Hmm.
and that's educating my family too about the collection.
Yes. And then they can just pass it on to others. Guess what? Our family is
Yeah.
preserved. There's a collection on our family at this institution, this
And
repair.
I hear that quite a bit with
Yes.
family when they go there and then they see themselves as like a sense of pride,
Yes.
it
Yes.
does something for them
Hmm.
to know that, we told our own story.
Right.
You know, the everyday people didn't have to be people who, did significant things, but the fact that they were strong and resilient and they made their way,
Yeah.
um, I'm working on preserving the history of the Black farmers now.
Hmm.
And that's due to the fact that I understand the culture of agriculture. And
Hmm.
a lot of those farmers, I've watched them pass away. I have collected their history, asked those questions about farming and the techniques, and oftentimes when I uh, post those type of oral histories on YouTube, somebody in the family always get in contact with me and say, "Thank you so much." Just hearing their voice and seeing their picture,
Yes.
you know, it's then you know that your mission was fulfilled.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's nothing
Absolutely.
like it.
And you know what? I have watched your YouTube videos on the farmers, and they're so educational, so inspiring, and it's new information.
Yes, it is.
Hmm.
Yes, it is. And to say that that information is new information that we're hearing, but just think about it. Most of us, I know my family was field hands. They
Hmm.
knew nothing but agriculture,
Yes.
you
Hmm.
know, but yet there was yet the most discriminated people, they was discriminated against in so many areas as it relates to the land. And
Hmm.
to have them to tell their story, you
Hmm.
know, to move around in the Florida parishes and collect their stories and take their photographs of doing what they do. I always tell them, look, just act as if I'm not even here. Do not pay me any attention. I just want to catch you just doing what I just want to document you doing what you do,
Hmm.
doing what you love,
Yes. Yes.
you know. And so I'm having fun at what I do,
Yes.
but
Hmm.
it's not fun when boxes and boxes stacks up in my office and, you know, that's not fun.
Well, I can relate to the boxes. I have boxes here.
I don't want to do that again. And I always say, oh my goodness, I gotta do it. So I find that energy. And I know that, you know, summertime in Louisiana can be very, very brutal.
Hmm.
So I have a plan to stay inside
Hmm.
and work on those audio files,
Hmm.
you know. So I do set those times for myself, Bernice. Like
Yes.
I have what I'm gonna do in the wintertime
Hmm.
and I have what I'm gonna do in the summertime.
Great. Hmm.
Because it's too hot to move around. So that time, that's the time I block to come in here and say, let me work with these files. And to know that I do have the Amistad that's there. I do have Southeastern that's there in the library. So that's really, really, you know, important to know that I do have people that will help me.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's wonderful to know.
That is wonderful.
You know, and I'm looking forward to the day that the Amistad will take these VHS tapes and just convert them over. And so maybe I can go there and look at it because some of it is 35 years ago,
Oh my goodness.
40 years ago. Look how time.
I know.
And that's a
And it
very
is passing. It is passing
it's
by.
massive.
It's that's
Mhm.
right. Yes. Mhm.
And I always one of my most important things I tell myself, and I ask the Heavenly Father, you have blessed me with health. You gave me this mission. And now show me how to process it,
Mhm.
what to do,
Mhm.
you know. And I learn from other people. I learn from other people by looking at all what they have in their homes and I'm saying to myself, oh, they really just don't have any idea of what can happen to this collection.
Yes.
I'm hoping that the people in their 80s really hear me. They think they have time. But Bernice, we don't have all the time we think we have.
No, we don't. And we're not meant to be here forever.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I don't want a piece of history. My cousin said something to me that was very disturbing. He said, Antoinette, he said, I want you to know that when you stop, we're going to have this block of history that we know. And hopefully someone come along and it doesn't take that person 30 years to come. So just think about that.
Mhm.
Where I started and where I stopped. So if I stop at this point, what's next?
Mhm.
Is this all we're going to have?
Mhm.
Is this block? Because I haven't met any interns in this area that's willing to come and spend the summer. I'm talking about somebody that's from the area, not someone from another state.
Yes.
Somebody that's your family members. You went to school with that person, you went to church with that person. It's a community person. So we have to start thinking about not rewriting, but in many cases, writing
Mm-hmm.
the story.
Mm-hmm.
The information wasn't there to write the story.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we have it in our office, in our homes, oh, I'll get to it tomorrow. See, I refuse to accept that about myself. I will get that tomorrow. No, I'm going to get to this today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy to talk yourself out of it.
Well, it really is. It really is, because you're going to always have something else that you feel you need to do.
That's
But
right.
then you have to then sit down and prioritize what's important. What's important now that's going to be even more important later.
That's right. That's right.
And when you talk about the Black homesteaders, I said we can't not talk about Black homesteaders
That's right.
when you have documents sitting at the National Archives that they should be looking at and telling that story. Whatever comes out of that piece of paper, tell it. Let other people know that your ancestor did this.
Like you did. I mean, I know when you started, you was just happy to learn what you knew, what you learned.
Yeah.
And didn't even think about the book until much later. But look at it, what it has evolved into now.
Mm-hmm.
You have other people looking at their ancestors who was homesteaders and
Right.
telling their stories.
Right.
Another story that I'm working on, I told you I interviewed Mr. Eddie Pons, the
Yes. Mm-hmm.
publisher and editor of the Drum newspaper, and
Mm-hmm.
he talked about his life as a strawberry picker. And the Strawberry Festival here in Tangipahoa Parish is one of the largest festivals probably in the state of Louisiana,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But at the same time, where is the history of the strawberry pickers who
Mm-hmm.
contribute to that area?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was happy that Mr. Pons did share, and he's looking for other people to share their story. Here's somebody saying, "Good evening. This is so interesting. Here are a couple of questions. What part of Louisiana are you gathering information? Where's Richardson's funeral home that you mentioned? Where can I get a copy of the newspaper?" All right. Richardson's funeral home is in Amite, Louisiana, and Kenner, Louisiana. And the funeral home in Amite, Louisiana is the one that preserved all the funeral programs at the Center for Southeast Louisiana Studies in Hammond, Louisiana. And I am gathering information from the three Florida parishes, which is St. Helena, Tangipahoa, East Feliciana, Washington, and Livingston. So that's really five, because it's impossible just to gather from Tangipahoa and not St. Helena,
Yeah.
St. Helena and not Livingston and Washington, because Tangipahoa is only was established in 1869. So it's young, relatively young compared to the other parishes. So there's no way we can, like most of your research for your family, Livingston Parish
Livingston and St. Helena.
and St. Helena.
Because remember, I found the original
Right.
documents in St. Helena.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
You see?
And then went to Livingston Parish
That's right.
and
That's
found
right.
other stuff in the courthouse. So you have to know the history of both of those places and then look at those places. Yes.
Right. And she would like to know, where can I get a copy of the Drum newspaper? If you go on Facebook, they have a Facebook page of the Drum, but I know that it's the free copies all through Tangipahoa Parish. I don't know if any is in St. Helena, but I know Baton Rouge. But you can find many of. If you go online, you can see the electronic version of the newspaper as well. And the Drum newspaper has been around 34 years. Look at that history. It's a lot of
Absolutely.
history.
That's
It's a lot of
right.
history. So, any last questions for me before we close out? And we want to thank everybody for joining in tonight. And most importantly, please, everyone, hear what I'm saying. Make that decision. Make that decision to finalize your collection and make sure that collection go where you want it to go. I want to do it in my lifetime.
Mhm.
That was one of the things that was most important to me. Not to post it in a will, not to, I mean, to write it in a will, to verbally tell my family members, but I wanted hands on with the collection. And I made that decision. And I know one day my offsprings will forever be grateful. My nieces, my nephews, my cousins, other people in the community, they will be forever grateful. And oftentimes, Bernice, let me just say this. Most people donate a collection sometime after a person dies.
Yes.
See, I've been very blessed to make that decision in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not that person who makes the decision themselves. It's the family members of that deceased person who make that decision to donate those papers.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to do it myself. So I feel, let's say, what I have in my office now is not compared to what I have preserved.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very, that what I have right now is just basically oral histories on videos and
Mm-hmm.
audios.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And by you making that decision,
mm-hmm,
you you analyzed your material. You knew what was important,
mm-hmm,
historically important to the community, and what was important for your family. Whereas somebody else making that decision after you pass away, they may look at it and say, "Oh, that's nothing."
and what if they just take everything in your office and just put it in a box and say, here, that could be social security numbers.
Yeah,
That could be a lot. That's why you have to go through the collection.
right.
You really have to do. I mean, I talked about the three boxes, but I didn't talk about the trash can and not or the shredder too, because I also had things that it didn't have any significance, you know. So I was able to purge, get rid of this. Okay, you know, especially your notes. You might think that your notes is not important, but your notes are important. If it relates to a story, and you
Mhm,
will look at most of those collections, they have notes that they was writing.
mhm,
You know, and some of the cards of thank you cards that I received throughout the years, I even donated that
mhm,
because the card would tell the person how much the collection really helped them, or information that you have shared with them.
mhm.
So I hope that this segment of Nurturing Our Roots have inspired someone to consider. It's very important. It's just like anything else. It's just like a will. It's just like, opening successions and all that. This is vital. Please remember this, that your family papers are very important, especially someone elderly that have been preserving things for decades. Do not throw their items away. I can be reached at nurturingourroots@gmail.com. That's nurturingourroots@gmail.com. I say I'm not taking any more papers. And at this point, I think I have probably processed my last collection of funeral programs. They're going to have to go straight to the funeral home now. If I'm ever going to finish the audio collection, I have to do that, and the video collection.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, Bernice, I want to thank you for interviewing me and talking about something that you and I both know is so important. Just thank you.
My pleasure. Every time I talk to you, I learn something too. So,
Likewise. And we want to thank everybody else for tuning in to Nurturing Our Roots. And we look forward to you being coming and join us again to learn what we have to talk about.